You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.
Gold, crude oil, corn, soybeans, and more. With so many tradable products, the futures options market can be an intimidating place. How can you possibly keep track of the latest trading developments across so many different products? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Welcome to This Week in Futures Options, the program designed to help active futures options traders stay on top of this ever-changing marketplace. Each week, we'll break down the top trades, hot products, volatility explosions, and much more. This Week in Futures Options streams live, so be sure to check out our live stream via the Mixlr app. That's MIXLR. Or join our live chat room at mixlr.com/options-insider. Whether you're an experienced veteran or a newcomer looking to separate the wheat from the lean hogs, This Week in Futures Options has the information you can't find anywhere else. This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. And now, get ready to break down the latest futures options trading activity. It's time for This Week in Futures Options.
All right, everybody, that music means we are back. It is time once again for a little show we like to call around these parts TWIFO, This Week in Futures Options. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the optionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which all of you folks are binging these days. Hope you're having a good final part of your final full trading week of the mad year that has been 2025. Of course, make sure wherever you're getting your favorite podcast, you are subscribed to the full network. That way you don't miss anything coming at you on the on-demand side. If you don't want to miss anything on the pro side, including the upcoming Vol Deathmatch 2.0 or any of the legion of stuff that hit the pro yesterday and is coming at you today, including Options Oddities coming up a day early, an early edition of Options Oddities. You want to get your hands on that, and trust me, you do, as well as, of course, the final Pro Trading Crate of the Year, Pro Q&As. We even throw in some extra fun, like not one but two fantasy casts this week. Even Mr. Overby got in on the act this week as well. So a lot of fun to be had. The optionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go. Treat yourself for the end of the year, a little bit of pro fun. It's a fun time, if I do say so myself. And speaking of fun times, I love when I get to call the shots on TWIFO. So let's do it. It is time for the Movers and Shakers Report.
It's time to find out what's rallying on the light side and falling to the dark side at CME Group this week. It's time for the Movers and Shakers Report.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Movers and Shakers Report, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down all the action, lighting it up to the light side and to the dark side over there at CME Group this week. If you fired up this report for yourselves, if you have the premium edition of the old Bantix, and again, you should be checking them out, BANTIX, Bantix.com, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires on all this data and a whole bunch more we really don't have time to get to on the show. We really just scratched the surface, listeners. But you know what? You don't need the premium tools to get access to this chart we tweeted out for you right before showtime. If you did that, listeners, if you checked that, you would see that it is a mostly red week out there, but not a bloodbath by any means. I'd say we're hanging out roughly 60-40 red over green. That said, our largest percentage mover on the week is to the upside. Can you guess what it is this week? I'll give you a few minutes because we're going to start, guess where? In the dark side, listeners. Yep, we're going red, as is my want. Number 5, we're kicking it off in the ags. It's been a little while since we've gone to the ags. You know, the other complexes are just taking up all the oxygen in the room these days. But the ags saying, don't forget about us today. Number 5, soybean oil off about 4.5% for number 5. Number 4, right above it, just beating it by 0.01% this week. It's the technology sector of the S&P 500. Yeah, go figure. Tech getting a little beat up this week. Number 4, S&P Tech. Number 3, back to the ags. It's our old pal Chicago wheat. Last week we had KC wheat. This week, Chicago wheat, making it all the way up to number 3, off 4.82%. Number 2, yeah, it's BTC Crypto, not feeling the love these days, off nearly 6%. And then number 1 with a bullet again this week, it's our old pal Nat Gas, off a little over 7%, 7.04% to be precise. It was number 1 in the same direction last week, off 16.6%. Man, why didn't I buy those Nat Gas puts when I was saying to Dan, wow, we're 5 handle seems a little lofty to me in Nat Gas. I let him talk me off the ledge. That's what I get for listening to that guy, Mr. Grams. Who would listen to a guy like that? Good times here in Nat Gas. I'm sure when Dan comes back on, he will be happy to rebut me as we keep on climbing to the upside. Once again, to ags we go. I might have to get a little green today on the show today, listeners. It's corn, up 2.13%. That also reflects kind of how light the light side is this week. Only cost you a little over 2% to break into the light side. So a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Number 4, you know what it is. It has to be somewhere on this list. It's silver. It's actually pretty far down. Only number 4 this week, 2.2% to the upside. It was number 1 with a bullet last week, up nearly 12%. Number 3, our old pal, 3-month SOFR, 3.55%. Number 2, we're going all shiny the rest of the way, listeners. Number 2, it's platinum, up 5.65%. And did you guess what the number 1 percentage mover is at CME this week? Hint, it's one of the shiny ones. Yeah, it's Palladium, up a little over 15% on the week. It was number 5 in the same direction last week, up about 3%. So good couple of weeks out here for Palladium. Good couple of weeks for pretty much all the shiny stuff out here on the old TWIFO show. Before we get into some products, let's look at the old CVOL movers and shakers, shall we? Again, you can fire up this report for yourselves. Just type CME and CVOL, CVOL, into whatever browser you're running. That will get you to the dashboard. Set your high-low range to 1 week. If you're listening around showtime, if you're listening down the road, you might have to adjust it a little bit to line up with whenever you're listening. And then go to the aggregates tab, and that will get you lined up with the show report for today. Topping our list today, we have the Energy CVOL, which again, not surprising. Energy, WTI making some headlines out there, crude in general, on the backs of us, shall we say, intensifying the pressure on Venezuela, including ratcheting up an embargo, taking a bunch of crude off the market out there in Venezuela. So that's going to give us a little bit of juice in prices, which otherwise, crude's been pretty much going to die for the latter portion of this year. So interesting to see vol coming back to life this week. Energy CVOL, 63.68, up 3.63 points just today. So our biggest mover today to the upside, certainly. That is the high for the week, the low, 59.21. So Energy vol getting a shot in the arm on the back of the, let's just call it the Venezuela brouhaha. And below it, we have commodities, the aggregate commodities CVOL, 38.75, up a little over 2, about 2.05 points today. That is the high for the week, the low, 36.70. So far, we're 2 for 2, pinning it to the upside. Below it, we have the aggregate metals CVOL, 24.09 is where it's hanging out, up about 1.5 points. That is close to the high for the week. The high was actually 24.42 that it hit yesterday. The low, 22.61. And then below it, we have the aggregate ag CVOL, also roaring back to life this week. 18.01 today, up about 1/4 point today. That's right off the high of 18.10 that it hit yesterday. The low, 17.79. So we're pretty much 4 for 4, pinning the needle to the upside, or pretty close to it in our CVOL list. And then the rest of it's all going the other way, listeners. The Treasury price vol, 4.03. That's about as low of a number as you're going to see on this list, listeners. That is the low for the week, the high, 4.57. So Treasury vol going to die in the latter portion of December. Go figure. The Fed's behind us now, so not a lot to drive Treasury price action the rest of the year. FX vol also getting taken to the woodshed. 5 3/4, off about 0.1 today. That is the low for the week. The high 6 1/4, so off about half a point on the week in FX vol. And then, of course, bringing up the rear, we have the Treasury yield vol. 73.12. That's one of the lowest levels we've seen in some time on that number. Off 1 1/4 points today. That is the low for the week as well. The high 83.56. So coming off over 10 points in the Treasury yield vol as well. We have a lot of things to choose from on the show this week, listeners. There's been a lot of action. Nat gas once again leading to the dark side. We got our old pal silver to the upside here as well. We've been doing a lot of nat gas and silver on the show. I think we have to mix it up. And one of the things that's catching my eye this week in our movers and shakers is the ags. Haven't been there in a little bit. So let's head out there now.
It's time to get our hands dirty exploring the latest options, trades, and trends in corn, wheat, soybeans, and more. It's time to talk ags.
All right, listeners, just crunching a few numbers here in the ags. You can do this yourselves. Just type cmegroup.com/TWIFO into your browser of choice, listeners. That will get you to our reports. You have to log into your CME account. If you don't have one, it takes a few minutes to log in and set one up. Then you're off to the races. Just trying to find which of these ag products is standing out to me. Obviously, corn is to the upside, but not exactly a rock'em sock'em robots week from a volume perspective in corn. We have seen wheat on the radar the last couple of weeks. It's a decent week in Chicago wheat, so I think we will head out there this week. SRW wheat putting up 109,000 contracts right now. The front future at 508 3/4. That's off 20.5 handles just since Monday, or nearly 4%. Obviously, if you go back to the end of our show last week, it's off nearly 5%, about 4.8%. So they're coming for wheat. Again, about 110,000 contracts on the tape. The nice thing about ags is that they're not all 0 day all the time. They play in a mix of expirations, including a little bit longer term. In Chicago wheat this week, we're going out to March. That's where the lion's share of the action is, 36.3%. That has a whopping 64 days to go. It's been a while since we've gone out that far in any of the products out here. By the way, if you're wondering what is March vol in Chicago wheat, it's at a 20 3/4. Kind of unched on the week, which is kind of interesting. The wheat vol is all over the place. The near-dated vol is pretty juicy. You're at about a 28.5 in the 0 day contract, 24 in the 1 day contract. Then it drops to about a 16, 17 until we get out to the beginning of next year. It starts creeping up again into the 20s. And then, of course, where we get to March at about almost a 21. Skew-wise, we saw a pretty strong bid to the upside last week, 8.6% bid. That is still pretty strong this week, 6.9% bid. So folks lean into the upside. Maybe they're fading the sell-off in wheat. They're thinking it's a little bit overdone, or it could be a little bit of skew rotation as well. Maybe a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. The puts getting cheaper as well, 6.3% offered last week, 8.3% offered this week. So puts getting cheaper. Calls getting slightly cheaper as well, so maybe that isn't exactly a straight-up skew rotation out here. But interesting stuff across the board. Again, this is kind of a surprisingly pronounced skew. Looks a little bit almost like a precious metal skew with a bid to the upside and a discount, pretty firm discount to the downside. And what is dominating the tape out here in Chicago wheat this week, listeners? It is the 550 calls. I said we're at about a 508 3/4. In that future, listen, that front future, 550 calls. It's a wild strike. That's pretty far out of the money, listeners. Going up a whopping 7,000 times this week. It's a fairly active contract. Looks like the big day was actually Monday. They went up 3,800 times on Monday, and then 1,500 times on Tuesday, 1,300 times on Wednesday. Only about a couple of hundred times today. Tell you what, let's go back to Monday really quick and see what they were trading for on Monday. The 550s in March were going up for $8.78. That was opening paper. Doesn't look like there was any call spread or anything else really going on with that. It seems like it was just straight 550s going up for size. So $8.78 for a pretty substantially out of the money call in Chicago wheat. Now you're getting some duration with that. You're getting all the way out to March. There's always planting and harvest cycles with all these ag products. So that's going to get into the rotation there as well. You down for a little bit of that March upside, nearly $9 for that, listeners? You think we might have a little bit of a pop back to the upside? That's probably why we're seeing this bid to the skew out here, listeners, is all this pretty extreme out of the money call action, which is kind of interesting. We also saw on Monday the par puts, the 500 puts, also in March, going up 2,400 times on Monday, a total for the week of 5,200. So they've been pretty active as well. By the way, those were trading for $8.80. So you're talking almost even money. So when I see that, par puts and 550 calls going up similar size, premium-wise, it seems like it lines up. $8.80 versus $8.80. That screams zero-cost collar to me, or something along those lines, listeners, some sort of risk reversal. But it seems like they were closing on the puts and then loading up on the upside. So I guess, if you have those puts, we have seen a bit of a retracement out there. So you're maybe monetizing those and then putting that back to work to the upside. It could be unrelated paper, but it is all the same day and it's all the same expiration month for the most part. So one of those things where if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, chances are it's a duck. We also saw the 5-quarter puts, 525 puts going up about 4,800 times this week, listeners, with, again, the big day for those was actually Wednesday. So we're kind of trading all over the place here. Looks like 3,100 going up, mostly closing on Wednesday. If you're wondering, on Wednesday, they were trading for a little bit shy of $30, $29.17. So interesting prints kind of all over the place. Any of these intrigue you? Any of these float your boat out here in good old Chicago wheat? Let's just look really quickly. Any other interesting prints going up out here? Outside of March, we've got the Feb 485 puts changing hands 3,400 times this week. The big day for those was actually Tuesday, about 2,200 times on Tuesday, 600 times on Wednesday. Looks like mostly opening there. Pretty close to 600 times again today for these puts. Let's see if I can get some prices on these 485 puts. Today they're changing hands for $3 exactly. So maybe those intrigue you out here as well. Again, a lot of different stuff going up out here in Chicago wheat. Kind of fun to sink our teeth, pun intended, into a product that we don't really get a chance to talk about a lot. I'd love to sink our teeth into Bitcoin. Fortunately, not a ton of flow going up out there, listeners. And you know what? We have talked a lot of energy in the past. It's mostly been focused on nat gas. Nat gas has been delivering on the volatility front, certainly of late out here, listeners. But I think we want to change it up a little bit today, just because there has been so much interest and so much headline focus on the crude oil space. So I think we shall head on out to energy next.
It's time to tap into the deep options well of black gold, Texas tea, nat gas, and more. It's time to talk energy.
All right, everybody, welcome to the wild, dare I say it, explosive world of energy here, listeners. And you know what? Energy is topping our list of CVOL movers and shakers. We have nat gas number one to the dark side. If we expand this list out here this week, listeners, we have WTI in there. It's just outside of our range. But, vol-wise, energy definitely moving. And we're seeing a decent amount of volume here in WTI. So let's get out of here this week. This Just the Facts, ma'am, edition with a little bit of WTI. Oh, I see in the chat, you want WTI? Well, guess what? Ask and you shall receive, Mr. Option God. To WTI we go. Go into that asset class drop down. You're going to pop out of ags. You're going to go down 2 slots to energy. Then in product family, you're going to go crude oil. And obviously WTI is at the top of that list. A little over 500,000 contracts, about 510,000 contracts changing hands so far this week. So a decently active week, slightly above average. We used to expect, 400, 450 on an average week. So about 510, decent volume. Again, we're not talking nat gas numbers of threatening 1 million, but a decent action nonetheless. Again, a lot of this action driven on the backs of this intensifying conflict, call it what you will, with Venezuela, taking a fair amount of crude off the market, at least for right now. WTI coming into the start of the show, $56, pretty much exactly in that front future, actually off 1.25 points. That's one of the reasons why it didn't make it onto our movers and shakers this week because it actually would have come in on the dark side, given up some of the gains it had earlier this week. It's actually off since Monday, a little over 1, about 1.2 handles, or about 2.1%. And if we expand it out to the end of our show last week, it's off about almost exactly 2%. So it would have come probably in our bottom 10 for this week, which is kind of interesting given the little bit of a dust up we saw earlier this week and a little bit of a rally in crude prices. But I said, for the latter part of this year, crude prices have been going to die, and that is still mostly the narrative out here. Where's the action in WTI this week? Well, you might be forgiven for expecting a lot of near-dated flow given the hot headline action that's going on out there in the crude market right now, but it's actually out in February. It's the Feb contract doing nearly half of the flow this week, about 45.5%. So 27 days to go, so a little bit longer term, which is, again, kind of interesting out here in WTI this week. Vol-wise, what's vol in Feb WTI? It's about 29.5 right now. That is getting a little bit juicier. That's up about 1.5 points, and also reflecting what we're seeing in our CVOL report, listeners, where the Energy CVOL is at the top of our list for the week. Obviously, WTI, a big driver of that. Skew-wise, kind of interesting action out here as well. The puts were 2.6% bid. Guess what? Catching a bid now for the latter portion of the week, up to about 5% bid. I bet you didn't have that on your bingo card after you heard those headlines earlier this week about Venezuela. Calls, 0.2% bid last week, so they were effectively flat. This week, 3.2% discounted. So interesting. They're obviously lining up back to the downside. Whatever blip they were pricing in earlier this week, they are definitely fading that now. So 3.2% discounted are the calls. 5% bid are the puts. Definitely looking like they're expecting a little bit more of the worm to turn to the downside, at least for the near term here in WTI. And what's the hot option out here this week in WTI, listeners? Even though we are fading, looks like it was the 60 calls in February that was leading the dance, trading pretty actively all week long. The big days were Tuesday and Wednesday. Go figure. That's when we had the most headline risk out there, listeners. Almost 6,000 on Tuesday, about 5,700, and about 6,000 pretty much exactly on Wednesday. Opening both days, 3,300 today against an OI of about 12,000. Let's go see. What do you think a Feb 60 is trading for out here, listeners? It's got 27 days to go, so you are getting a little bit of duration. Right now, the Feb 60 is going up for 65 cents right now. So if you're feeling a little bit of a return to upside, then maybe you think that's cheap. If you think, man, no way we're getting above the 60 handle again anytime soon, maybe you're saying sold to you. I would just, if you're going to do that, I would do it covered or with something else in your back pocket, lest something else happen with Venezuela or perhaps in the Middle East that drives us back north of that 60 strike again. Naked selling calls in any of these products that way can get pretty dicey pretty quickly. But either way, a lot of action on the 60 calls out here this week. Number 2, right behind it, though, to the downside we go. It's the double puts, the 55 puts, listeners. Let's see, they changed hands nearly 15,000 times, about 14,500 times this week, listeners. Again, these are out in February. The big day for these, once again, Tuesday. Tuesday was the banger day. 6,300 on Tuesday, almost 6,400 opening there. 4,400 on Monday, also opening. 3,100 on Wednesday, again opening today. A little bit shy of 500, so not a big day today. The OI on this strike, 16,600. So let's see if we can find some prices for these bad boys. Let's go back to Tuesday because that was the hot day for these puts here, listeners. They're giving me Jan. I don't want Jan double puts. I want Feb. There we go. Feb double puts. $1.75, listeners, on Tuesday is what they traded for. So probably a little bit more than that now. So $1.75 to $2, somewhere in that ballpark range. Are you a buyer at that price? Or would you say sold to you, get a little bit of juice to draw a line in the sand in WTI? We also saw some action on the 50 puts. I'm looking here. I don't see a ton of put spreads going up. So it doesn't look like, it looks like it was just unrelated put paper, even though it does line up day-wise. We have about 5,300 of the 50 puts going up on Monday. That was the big day, mostly opening there. 4,300 on Tuesday, slightly closing. And then 2,000 on Wednesday, slightly closing. So you could argue 50 double put spread was going up, rolling from the 50 to the 55s. But today they're putting up about 1,800 against only 450 of the doubles. So, and I'm looking here in the flow. I don't see a lot of put spread action on either of those days, Tuesday or Wednesday. So it seems like it might feel like a vertical, or a roll, but it looks like they were just two separate trades. The 50 puts and the 55 puts both looking pretty active. Looks like leaning towards closing on the 50s on Tuesday and Wednesday. Let's look here really quickly if we see any other interesting and or aberrant prints out here in WTI for this week, listeners. Most of that action this week was in the 50s. If you want some near-dated flow, looks like the 56 calls traded less than 2,000 times this week, about 1,900 times. So again, given kind of the back and forth action we had this week, you might expect a little bit more. Looks like the big day for those was actually Wednesday, about nearly 1,600 of those 56 calls going up on Wednesday, mostly opening, only about 200 today. The OI right now is about 1,200 on that strike. Near dated, we have 56 calls expiring in 4 days going up this week as well. They traded about 1,500 times. They all traded on Wednesday as well. So Wednesday was the hot action for the near dated stuff out here, listeners. All right, that is going to do it for our Just the Facts, Ma'am edition of TWIFO today. But you know what, listeners? If you're hanging out in the pro and you feel like talking some flow, then I got a place for you to go. It's Options Oddities. I'm a poet and I don't even know it, listeners. And it's coming up right now, right after this show. So stay tuned. Again, these embarrassments of riches coming at you on the pro side. 5 shows yesterday, back to back to back to back. 4 shows back to back to back to back today. Do we like you folks or what? Yet another reason why you should be checking out the optionsinsider.com/pro. And of course, while you're checking things out, make sure you're checking out our pals over there at CME Group. CMEgroup.com/TWIFO is the place to go to learn more and follow along with all these reports we have here on the show. Unfortunately, this is the final TWIFO episode of 2025. Obviously, next week, Christmas Day, the week after that, New Year's Day. So no TWIFO shows. But we'll be back in the new year to break down all the wild action that lit up the tape in 2025 and look ahead to see if we can spot some wild action in 2026. So have a great holiday. Have a great new year, listeners. And we'll see you back here in January. That's wild. See you back here in January. Another episode of This Week in Futures Options. Stay safe out there.
This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world manage risks and seize opportunities. CME Group offers the deepest and most liquid options on futures across all asset classes, including interest rates, equity indexes, foreign exchange, energy, agriculture, and metals. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. This broadcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute trading advice or the solicitation of purchases or sale of any futures or options. The rulebook of the applicable exchange should be consulted as the authoritative source on all current contract specifications. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's MIXLR.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.